Hey, welcome to our second show, Baby Boomers, Flashback Sports with Baby Boomers Dave and Gil and Dave, and we're happy to be here with all the craziness going on in the world. We want to go back to our time in the 70s and 80s when we lived for sports, and we want you to have a little deflection. But we also want to go back and tell you some of the things that we had when we were kids were not as great as they seem. So welcome aboard, Dave, and it's good to be with you again.
Hey, good seeing you, Gil. Yeah, looking forward to tonight's show. We've got some good stuff planned, some retro stuff for sure, but we'll also talk about today's sports. A little compare and contrast. I know we've got some of the younger generation who are watching us as well. So we're not gonna be talking, we're not gonna be talking about just about the '77 Yankees or '78 Yankees. Although
We're not. I thought we were going to. That's what we were going to talk about. No,
we could absolutely do an hour show like that, and but that's.
But the young kids may hang up after 10 minutes.
Yeah, no. And if anybody was with us for the first show last week, we talked about our theme about wanting to remember the greats, the not so greats, the famous and infamous, the great characters, the great events of kind of our youth, which is really the '70s to the early '80s when kind of was kind of our heyday, and that's where we kind of get the baby boomer names because we're you and I are the last of the baby boomers. So if anybody hasn't picked that up yet, that's kind of the theme.
And the youngsters call us baby boomers, but it's not so endearing.
Right.
But for us, we feel it's endearing.
Right. Yeah. So we want to talk about. I think tonight we're going to talk a little bit about the great teams of our youth, particularly of the '70s. Why things are a little different now. We could talk about we're going to talk about the Yankees, the Reds, the A's, all these teams, the Steelers, the Raiders, but and why the games have changed a little bit because and a lot of it has to do with free agency, but we reminisce about these teams because we remember them so well. We remember all the names. I mean, teams that they weren't even our teams. The Raiders weren't my team, the Steelers weren't my team, the Cowboys weren't my team for sure, but yet we remember all the players. And so we're going to talk a little bit about why that was, besides them just being great players. And a big part of it obviously has to do with free agency and how teams get broken up right now. But we're going to, and also kind of compare how, one generation of teams will compare it to the other. So, and we're going to get a lot of mix from our callers as well. We want to have you as interactive as possible, not just dominate the conversation.
That's correct. Because what we had talked about, we really want the fans to be interactive and ask us questions. We may not know everything, but it's good to have a good dialogue. And like we said, everything in the '70s was not, we're not going to say everything in the '70s was better, but we're going to just show you some things. And then we'll also critique the teams, the super teams. And maybe, people will say we'll compare to some teams today and so forth. But we have a lot of topics in the future. We're going to have everyone hockey fights. We're going to have wrestling. We're going to have everything to bring everybody in there. And like I said, we're looking forward to bring back the show. So we're on our way.
I was talking to my son earlier today, and we were talking about, I was getting aggravated. I was actually listening to a Michael K. rant talking about, the fact that Kevin Durant is not playing today because he played all of 27 minutes against a minor league Minnesota Timberwolves team yesterday. So naturally, of course, he can't play today. And just gets you aggravated because as much as I'm all for the players, and I love sports today, and I love basketball, but it aggravates me that I can turn on the Clipper game last night and Kawhi Leonard's not playing, and the net game, big game against Philadelphia for first place, and Durant's being arrested because he's playing.
I know. Well, this is a different generation. Hey, look, we have catches. The night game, the next day's a day game. They can't catch. Years ago, they caught double headers. It's a different world. Twilight double headers, right, Dave? We'll talk about twilight and double headers. I mean, today, God forbid, they can go more than 3 days before they need a day off. I mean, it's like they have mental health days. These plays. Exactly. Like they can't. God forbid, they can't play more than 6-7 games. The season just starts and they need a day off a week after. It drives me crazy. But we'll talk about that stuff later on. And we'll go always, like I said, we're going to go back in time and remember some of the good times and also some of the funny times and some of the not so good times.
No, and you know what? We make fun of the fact, it's a players' league. When it was an Orange League, there was a lot of crazy stuff going on as well. There's a lot of things that happened years ago you'd scratch your head at right now. And we're as we go down memory lane, we're gonna show some of those things. I think Anthony's got some stuff kind of queued up for us now. But because there was a lot of things that happened during the '70s that, and early that you scratch your head at. There's a lot of stuff. I think we can look back on all the crazy events, the characters, the games that took place in that generation, and to have some fun with it as well.
Okay, let's have cue up one of these memories from our youth, right, Dave?
Yep.
Here we go.
As Raleigh Fingers comes on, Howard talked with Raleigh about the disposition of a reliever and what it's all about. Let's listen.
So part of our job here, right, Gil, is to remind people that that's Raleigh Fingers being driven in from the bullpen to the mound or to the third base, dugout in a car. And probably didn't, for those of us of our age that watched it back then, we didn't think too much of it. But just think about the absurdity of a guy taking a car to the bullpen, from the bullpen to the mound. And all of this stuff was always done in the name of, money and advertising. They were trying to get as much advertising as they can out of everything that out of every opportunity they could. But we laugh now. You can see Aroldis Chapman, calling an Uber right now to go to the mound. You wouldn't see it today. So we make fun of today's player, but there's some goofy stuff that happened back then as well.
I mean, we used to think it was funny because some teams had golf carts with the hat of the team, and the bullpen would come in, and then Sparky Lyle used to come in with the Datsun. And it was funny, like they were coming from left field. They were going like 300, 400, feet, and they had to take a car. And it's absurd to think about it, but this is what some of the stuff in the 70s, it's a little wacky when you think about it. But it was more to try to get some revenue into the game.
Yeah, no, there's no question. It was a lot of fun. It was great. It's funny to think about it now, but there was a lot of stuff that was just done, and a lot of times at the players' expense too, or even at the fans' expense. 10-cent beer night in Cleveland, disco night in Chicago.
Bill Veeck, I think, did that, right?
Yeah.
WBBM News Time, 9:18. Time for Brad Palmer, Sport.
Many of the fans are scattering off the field now when they fight the police. And many SOC security members are joining the police, which are now about 40 or 50, and they're slowly, now rapidly walking out to center field where the fire is burning. The fans are now streaming off the field in great numbers, and I doubt if very few will be left to confront the police as they come in helmets and...
Yeah, Dave, that was not a great idea. They had that called Disco Demolition Night where everybody put disco records and they wind up lighting the thing on fire and almost burned down the stadium.
Right.
I don't know if that was a great idea for, I thought Bat Day was a little dangerous with everyone having a bat in the Bronx. But having Disco Demolition Night, that was such a great...
It was a horrendous idea. And what was even crazier is that the 10-cent... We have the video, but probably not going to show enough to show, but it was 10-cent beer night. So you can imagine what happened in Cleveland on 10-cent beer night. There was absolute bedlam. Again, people storming the fields, riots, attacking the players. It was insane. And the crazy thing about that, people forget, is they actually had another 10-cent beer night about 30 days later. They just limited the number of beers that you could have. So the owners were pulling out all the stops back in the 70s as well. And that went to other things as well that we kind of forget about. We look back and laugh about it, but you think about how does that, how did this happen? There's Bobby. Yeah, there's our boy, right? Bobby Mercer. With monuments in center field. That's when we've had some comments when people say let's put the monuments back on the field, but that was a ball hit and Bobby had to go through the monuments to get the ball. That's the old stadium in the early 70s when the Yankees weren't that great, but he was our guy, right, Dave? Right, yeah, no, he was.
Oh boy. Who's the guy on the left there? That's a famous guy on the left.
That's the great Bucky Dent right there.
That's right.
And that's so. Yes, so if you're 20 years old and you're saying guys being driven in from the bullpen in a car, Bobby Mercer running around center field trying to avoid the monuments, or Major League Baseball players playing in shorts, all those things happened back in the 70s. They're all funny. None of them were probably good ideas, but so it goes to show you when the owners kind of ran things more so than they do now that the Players League. So it's not, it's not just that things were better back then; they were just different. So,
but those shorts with the white side, that was Bill Veeck. Bill Veeck did a lot of crazy things. He had he used to have fans taking showers in the bleachers. He had like all these different inventions to get people in there. But to think that it looked like that was a Sunday, that looked like a league that we would play in, like an over 50 softball league, that they were playing in shorts like that. But I tell you, sometimes you laugh at the polyester, right? The uniforms. We're gonna have another show based on those great uniforms of the '70s.
We can do an hour just on the A's and the Astros.
Right.
And then now they have them kind of their retro uniforms, but they were fun. I mean, it was good. It was a lot of fun, but it just goes to show you, when we were kids, the owners ran things for sure, and they exploited everything. They exploited the players. They exploited the fans. So we talk about our generation as in a very favorable light, but there was a lot of kind of kooky things. So the players are having their time right now, in my opinion, maybe a little too much, maybe a little too easy. I made reference to the Kevin Durant, sitting out, today. John, LeMahieu sits out today, and Stanton sits out today, so they get 2 days off. They played 10 games this season. They're playing friggin' baseball. Stanton bats 4 times a game, doesn't play the field. He's got to get rested. It's that stuff kind of makes me crazy.
No, but you know what? This is part of the game. It's all these analytics, and we could get, the debate about this with everybody coming in and saying, to prevent injuries. But doesn't it seem like there's more injuries today than there were years ago when people played every day? I mean, that's the thing.
I don't know when the oblique muscle was invented, but every day somebody's, hurting their oblique muscle and they're out for if it wasn't for like Dominic DiNucci's double oblique shop in the 70s, I wouldn't even know this thing was a muscle. And yet every 10 minutes there's a guy going out in the disabled list. Another guy, the Toronto pitcher today, got put on the disabled list. So I don't know how it's happening. I'm sure there's some rationale behind it. I think players they're a major investment, so they're baby beyond.
Hey, look, we have somebody mentioning about 7-inning games. People don't like that. That's 7-inning games. It's like a softball league. People don't like that. Man on second.
Right.
This is like everything's changing now. One league has the DH. One league doesn't have anything. One person says we had 10-cent beer night. Now it's $15 for one beer.
Right.
So I mean, you go to the stadium. If you're gonna bring a family of 4, you're probably gonna spend $200 on food.
Yep.
So that's crazy. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
But
it is.
So that was a little segment we wanted to talk to you about. Some of the stuff when we grew up is not as great as we always like to say they were, but some of the absurdity. We will show stuff in the future that will even show more things. We're going to try to make one little topic every week. Some things you won't see, you can't believe that you saw it before, and we're going to discuss it. But I don't know, Dave. Sometimes, that's it. But
we're going to talk a little bit about the teams that we kind of grew up watching. And I'm a believer that today's athletes are the greatest athletes. I mean, there's no comparison to today's athletes. But I do think it was maybe a little more fun watching those teams of our youth because they stuck together a little bit.
Right.
So we want to kind of dive into that a little bit.
And also what I would say, you say the athletes may be greater, but I don't know if they have the fundamentals of the players of years ago. When it comes to maybe they went through the minor league system, they had many years and the training. And, like now stuff, I mean, you see stuff last night where a guy like Sanchez and they get caught off base. Who gets caught off on base down 3? I mean, this was unheard of years ago. I mean, Billy Martin would have popped a vein if he saw something like that. Ralph Houk too his tobacco would have spit out. I mean, these guys were these old time, these old lifers. I don't know if they, Dallas Green, all those guys, they wouldn't have been able to handle some of this stuff. I would love to have seen a guy like Martin or Earl Weaver managed today just for that. I don't know if they could handle it.
Oh my God. I would love to see Martin. I would love to see Earl Weaver. I'd love to see them both because they would be, especially today with analytics that dominate. And so these guys are there's no managing, there's no by your gut anymore. There's just not. You're doing things that your eyes are telling you not to do, whether it's taking out a pitcher well before he's due, or giving guys these systematic days off, not necessary.
Right, and I agree with you. The managers today are more puppets of the organization. They're just here to make the players feel good and talk good to the media and stuff like that. I don't know. I mean, a lot of them are baseball lifers, but they don't seem a lot of them have a feel for the game, or maybe they're not allowed to manage like they don't have the control that they did years ago.
Yeah.
That's. But we're going to talk about the '70s now. Me and Dave talk about the '70s super teams. We got the Yankees, we got the Reds, the A's. The Steelers, the Raiders. Lakers, the Celtics, the Islanders. I don't like to talk about the Islanders. No J.P. Barisi talk today. I don't want to hear that. That was a very bad thing. But we have the Islanders. We talked about the Flyers, Bruins, and why would the dynasties of those days and compare it to now. So we're going to show some. What do we got? A video of Dave or some photos that we're going to show of the '70s?
Yeah, so we got some, some of the teams we want to talk about are, the teams that just dominated the sports scene back then. And we can kind of get into, in football, it was, the Steelers won 4 championships. And the amazing thing about that team is, you know them all. We talked about this a little bit last week. We know all the plays on the offense and defense, on the defensive line. Same thing with, there's the big red machine, the Yankees, that we knew them all. And that's what's changed over the years. I think for the worse, as much as I think the players in general are better athletes right now. And in some cases, it's more fun to watch. I love the NBA players. I mean, I just think the skill level's off the charts. But I just don't find the teams today as interesting as they were back when we were young. Mostly because they stayed together.
Well, because you said they built a lot of rivalries over the years when the old Knicks would play the Bullets every year in the playoffs. You get a rivalry when you're playing the Yankees, play the Royals every year, the Yankee Red Sox, Rangers, Islanders. Yep. When you're playing in the playoffs every year and it's for the old beans, semifinals, finals, for the pennant, you start to get a real hatred. So a lot of times you don't have the same teams playing for the pennants. Like you had a little bit with the Yankees, with the Astros a couple times. They have developed a little bit of a rivalry, right. But years ago in Yankee Red Sox, when I was a kid, Yankee Red Sox and probably the Rangers Islanders were the hardest. I mean, the fans were so, you wouldn't even, today, we were talking about the secondary market and things like that. Years ago when people went to the games, the same people went to every game. Oh, here we go.
Yeah. Yeah, Roger Staubach. Right. Great Cowboy teams of really the kind of the late 60s through the late 70s. Staubach was a tremendous, amazing, because Staubach was the Heisman Trophy winner in I think 63, then did 5 years of service, still became one of the great quarterbacks of all time.
Yeah, he was outstanding in the 2-minute drive. He was when you were down by 20, 30 points, this guy he was like a Joe Montana before his time,
Right, yeah, no question. I see a bunch of questions popping up. I think Jay mentioned become nothing but a business, too many dollars flowing through. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to. I think the analytics are hurting the sport to some extent, particularly in baseball, because too much. I know what I see. I know what I see when a guy's running out of bullets on the mound, or I know what I see when a guy doesn't matter whether it's a righty or lefty up. The guy's throwing well. He has a better chance of getting you out than the next guy coming in from the bullpen, who you don't know what he's got yet. And you see it all the time. And I do think that's also hurting the game.
Yeah, there's some notes here. We just had a note. Remember when someone lit the blue seat on fire at the Ranger Islander game? I went to some of those Ranger Islander games in the blue seats, and I was happy to get out alive, because God only knows what could happen up there. It was like unbelievable up there. I could tell you stories of playing hockey, being in the hallways between periods, and characters, the chief and this guy and that. It was a family. It was a, there we go, steel curtain. Okay. Yeah. Here you are, Joe Green, Dwight White. Yeah, if they were
Dynamite. 40 years later, you can name them.
I know.
Off the top of your head. That's what's kind of. I couldn't name the front four of the Jet team right now, and I'm a Jet fan. You know what I mean? 40 up, because there's just so much turnover from year to year. Other than the quarterback, couple of receivers, skill position players tend to stay. But there's so much free agency. I think it's hurt sports in general. And I'm a Yankee fan, and that's obviously been a good thing for the Yankees. It's allowed, they have, under Steinbrenner, certainly no one took more advantage of free agency than the Yankees did. So, but having said that, I think it hurts the sport a little bit. It's good for the players, which is great.
Dave, I always told you that when I spoke to you the other night. Charlie Finley, who had the great A's team, we'll show the picture of the A's team when they all had the mustaches. He said when free agency started, he said, we should make every player free agent every year. He says you wind up keeping your player who bats .250 and then go for somebody else. So,
right.
There's Mercer again.
Yeah.
We love Mercer. We can show Mercer 24. Hey, we're going to keep showing Mercer till he gets his plaque there. So if anybody with the Yankees is watching, make sure he gets his plaque, please.
Right. Exactly.
Mercer was a great Yankee and good guy too.
Right.
Someone's talking about the Jets, so we'll talk about the Jets another time.
Who wants to talk about the Jets? Yeah. Who wants to?
People like this Bucky Dent picture.
I will say this about the Jets. I don't know what the right pick is for the upcoming draft. Somebody just mentioned John from Oyster Bay, Zach Wilson, QB. I hope he's right. I hope John from Oyster Bay is right. I just have a feeling the Jets will somehow screw this up. But anyway. we'll see.
Well,
Anyway.
they always say it's the curse of Namath, making a pact with the devil for Super Bowl III. They call it the curse of Bachelors 3. He had to sell his place after the Super Bowl, so they said there's a curse about that. Now, the Rangers had a curse, and it took 54 years. I hope now the Jets, it's been almost 50. It's 50 years, right? The Jets, 52 years.
More than 50 years. 69 Super Bowl.
Wow.
So we've still had one legitimate quarterback in our history. If you think about that, it's insane.
Right. So, Dave, who at the baseball as super teams, what team do you favor? You favor the Reds, the A's, the Yankees? Which one do you favor?
I think the best team that of that generation to me, in terms of from a baseball standpoint, was the Reds. I just think that lineup was insane, just offensively, defensively. I'm obviously a huge Yankee fan, but I thought the Reds teams. And then, from a football, I think the Steelers were clearly the class of that decade. Mm-hmm. They just were. They stayed together. Like I said, you have so many Hall of Famers on that team. Hockey, you went from Canadians to the Islanders. That Islander team was unbelievable. The Canadian team really of mid-'60s to really the late '70s, interrupted by a couple of years of the Flyers, were a dominant team. You had so many Hall of Famers, so many stupid.
I know. Well, the Canadians are always as much as even when they beat the Rangers, so you never really hated the Canadians. We hated the Bruins, we hated the Islanders, we always hated the Flyers because of Schultz and Broad Street Bullies and things like that. But compared to the Reds, I'm going to tell you 1 to 8 in the lineup, yes. But I love the Yankee team. The Yankees did have a great team, but I always say the A's team was better because I think without free agency, they would have stayed around. They lost Reggie and Catfish and Vita Blue and all those guys left, and they had won 3 years in a row. Remember, they beat the Mets, so all those Met fans remember '73, and Reggie beat them. But I think that the A's team was very underrated. How many teams have won 3 in a row? Very few, right?
Yeah. Their pitching staff, there's no comparison. A's had a great pitching. Catfish Hunter, Ken Holtzman, Vita Blue, Blue Moon Odom. Obviously Raleigh Fingers coming out of the bullpen. Cincinnati didn't have a great staff. They had they had Gary Nolan pitching, Don Gullett, Raleigh Eastwick out of the bullpen. They didn't have a very deep Jack Billingham.
Right.
They were kind of a pretty pedestrian pitching staff, but their lineup and their defense was tremendous.
I know the lineup is. Look, Bench was the best catcher I ever saw. Tony Perez. Joe Morgan, unbelievable. You go around. Pete Rose played third, and Forster. Ken Griffey, I think, was a DA, right? Dan Dreesen. They were stocked.
People forget that Ken Griffey, who was a lifetime 300 hitter, tremendous speed. In right field, Griffey and Forster in left. Cesar Geronimo was probably the premier defensive center fielder in the game in the '70s. And then you had one Hall of Famer after another in the infield. You had Bench, Perez, Morgan, who's considered maybe the greatest second baseman ever. Concepcion, who's not a Hall of Famer, but defensively plus a good hitting, shortstop, and of course Rose is the only not in Hall of Fame because of the gambling. So you have an infield basically of Hall of Famers and an outfield that was tremendous. That was just that next notch below. That's hard to repeat.
And also we had those great rivalry with the Lakers and the Celtics and the 76ers in the 70s and 80s. So I'd like to see if we could see this. 71 Pirates. Someone said 71 Pirates. What about 79 Pirates? We are family. 71 Pirates. Stargell, Clemente. Great team. I'm not going to tell you that, So I want to show people about this Lakers Celtic one with how much their rivalry was. So here we go, Anthony. Let's show that video. Wow! Now, Dave, that's basketball. I miss that basketball. Now that's now the guys can't play for probably half a season.
Yeah,
now Rambis and look, I never liked the Celtics because I'm a New York guy. I never liked when I grew up with the Knicks, I hated the Celtics. JoJo White, Havlicek, Cowens. I couldn't stand. I hated Heinsohn. He used to wear the plaid jackets. He used to yell and scream at the refs and throw his coat and everything. I hated the Celtics. I always rooted for the Lakers, even though I didn't like all the Lakers, and I always rooted for the 76ers. I like Dr. J, and I
like the Sixers. Right? When the Lakers and Celtics play, to me, it's like I want them both to lose. No, so
yeah, that was physical. Yeah. And let me tell you something. They went out, and I have to say those two. and if I had to agree on what team the best, Boston team, best Laker team, that's going to be a hard sell of who I can really determine who was better because Hall of Fame is on both sides, right? Up the wazoo,
Yeah, and they beat each other pretty good. And they were, they kind of between really an 80 and 87, 88 before Detroit had their couple-year run. It was just Lakers and the Celtics kind of going at it. And obviously, again, a lot of Hall of Famers. Who's better? I don't know. But yeah, I mean, we joke about, I'm glad we don't see those clotheslines anymore, but they are. It's amazing. Personally, these guys share agents right now, so they wouldn't want to touch each other. We changed all that when Isaiah Thomas kissed Magic Johnson in the middle of the court before he came. So I think that changed the landscape of the rivalry. So.
Well, as that went on in the 80s and 90s, we had the Knicks Bulls, which were, big rivals where they played every year. And also the Pistons and the Bulls used to go at it. I mean, what they used to do to Jordan, I think he used to get fouled at least 20, 25 times a game,
Yeah.
And, so there was some, in those days, it was a little different with the basketball. It was a little bit different than now. I mean, like I said, I always told Dave, I said, I would love to see, guys of our youth. I don't know, physically, but like a guy like Pistol Pete, I would love to see him play with a 3-point line. I would love to see Earl Monroe, Frazier, Jerry West, all the greats, Ernie D, Bob McAdoo. I mean, these guys were great players. And I would like to have seen him because today, like with the Euro step, what does that mean? Like we talk about this Euro step. I mean, like a guy like Chamberlain, could he get 80 points a game if he just took 3 steps? I mean, we don't even know what that means. My son tells me every day, that's a Euro step. I have no idea what that means. Do you know what that means, Dave? I don't know what the Euro step is.
That means after the 3 steps that he took a side step for a couple. So it kind of tacked on. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that makes the offense. I don't know what Jordan would have scored today in terms of not being able to touch a guy. Really, you really can't. Yeah, because Jordan, you can score so many ways on you. Obviously, he can shoot, take the ball to the basket. He can post you up if you didn't have the size. The other thing that we were talking about before about guys sitting out. Jordan won 6 champ. This is where I think you just point to stats and say, Michael Jordan won 6 championships in his time. In 5 of those 6 championship seasons, he played 82 games. The other one, he played 80. So he's playing every game. He's playing 38, 40 minutes a game, every game.
He's playing every play another 20. Yeah, I know.
He's fine. He's not out of energy. He gets through all the playoff rounds of the playoffs, and he had some tough. It wasn't a cakewalk for him. He had a lot of competition. Next game, they always gave him a run. Most of the series in the finals were going 6 games. So somehow he was able to play 82 games, play 38, 40 minutes a game, and he was fine. And I don't know why guys can't do this now who are younger. Michael Jordan is 40 when he's on the Wizards. Played 82 games and was playing 38, 39 minutes a game. So I don't know why guys can't do it today. I don't know why they wouldn't want to. I don't know if it's, they're just forced basically to sit it out, but you would think they want to. Pride alone would want them to play.
I know. Hey, look, Jordan, Jordan did have Pippen, which, was a superstar that people was very underrated, and that was a big key. We always said why maybe the Knicks didn't win. Maybe Ewing gets a bad deal about that. But Ewing really never had a superstar to play with him.
Yeah, nobody.
And that's a big key. I mean, he had. I love Mason, Anthony Mason. I love Oakley. I love that guy Derek Harper. They had good players, but they didn't have superstars. And it's hard to win with one. But I tell you, now we're going to talk about the Islanders. All right, well, you're going to talk about the Canadians and the Islanders. Hey, look, the Islanders to win 4 years in a row like they did. I'm a Ranger fan. That's remarkable because I think they won 19 or 20 series in a row. I think
they won 18, 20 in a row. They're still the last team to win 4 championships in a row. Could have easily been 5 or 6 because they had the best record in hockey when they lost to the Maple Leafs in '78. The Rangers knocked them off in '79 in an upset. Davidson was tremendous in that game, and then they finally got a couple pieces. They had a couple pieces, allowed them to win the playoffs. But they could have won 5 or 6 in a row. Then they lost to the Oilers, which started their run. All those teams, had the common denominator was they had their core stay together for a lot of years. And that's kind of, even going back to the Yankees of the 90s, they had their, we talk about their core 4, but they had a lot of players stay over. And that's changing, I think, for the worse. As much as I love watching NBA, I unfortunately, I think it's going down a path right now where the players are just dictating where they're playing. These super teams are being created. I think there'll I think the league could be so much better than it is. I mean, I think it's pretty good now, but I think it could be even better than what it is.
I know. Could you imagine when we were kids? Now, Frazier says I'll play with Pistol Pete. I only play with Chamberlain. I only play with Jabbar, and you got every other team is. Well, I'll take Earl Monroe, and we'll take Wes Unseld, and we'll take the best players every team, and they'll be on one or two teams. And and look, the Islanders were a great team, but growing up, I mean, Rangers were always up there, but they always missed out close. I mean, they had Bruins, the Flyers, who to this day I hate the Flyers. I mean, I can't stand the Flyers. I mean, I tell you, since Dave Schultz and, Don Selesky. And you know what I liked about the hockey in the 70s? They didn't wear helmets, so you had all those guys you could see their face. You could see them, dump and grind. You know what I mean? It wasn't like this European game. It was like hitting. I mean, we're going to go in the future, we're going to show a clip, not today, but of when the Russians played Philadelphia Flyers in an exhibition game. That's a classic where the difference have gone. But like I said, Dave, I would say when you even compare the Islanders to the Oilers, and the Oilers too might have won 4 or 5 more cups if they stayed together, because they were so good,
They were that good, and maybe we're just angry, Gil, because our teams stink right now, because the teams are not very good. Even Yankees not playing well. They're tough to watch. Cat from Jersey, he's talking about the Dodgers, so we'll give a shout out to Cat. The Dodgers, I assume. I don't know if the Dodgers today or the Dodgers of the 70s, both pretty good.
Or then maybe the 50s. Maybe he's talking about the Brooklyn Dodgers, why they left there. But, I had a guy tell me, he goes, next time you do your show, he said, go to the Polo Grounds or go to Ebbets Field and we can do it there. I said, that's a great idea.
Yes. What are we going to do? So.
What we're going to do, we're going to go right by where home plate was, and we're going to do our show from there. Coogan's Bluff and Ebbets Field. I miss the old stadiums, to be honest with you.
I know. Yeah. Jay Gretzky or Gordie Howe, come on. I mean, Gordie Howe's a tremendous player, but Gretzky was on another level from everybody else. He's got Babe Ruth type statistics of his generation. So. But
Gretzky, I mean, Gordie Howe was great for his time, but I tell you the truth. I mean, when I grew up, I thought Bobby Orr was tremendous. He's got to be in one of the best defensemen of all time. I mean, he changed the game. But Mario Lemieux, the guy's asking, Mario Lemieux was very good, but. He's no Gretzky, but he's up there. He was
just a notch, just a notch behind Gretzky. He had Gretzky-like skills in terms of being a playmaker. He's obviously physically just a stud because he's so much bigger than Gretzky. He unfortunately had some injuries, and I think he battled leukemia or cancer for a couple of years. So he would have been probably number 2, number 3, maybe behind Gretzky, maybe Bobby Orr, Gordie Howe. Hey, Steve, Anthony, let us know if we have any calls. I know we had a bunch of people in the back there. So anybody have any questions? Maybe now time to jump in before we kind of start yapping too much. So let us know. Too much
talking. Okay.
Yeah. So we don't want to dominate. So we also have somebody jumping in. There's Cat from Jersey.
Cat from Jersey.
Right.
So the big deal is you guys avoided. I'm wearing my Dodger hat, but what about the Patriots?
Oh, that's true.
Patriots. The Patriots are the
exception. 70s, but
the Patriots are the exception right now. For the last 20 years, they're kind of it, and they are the exception to rule. Where they were a dynasty under with Brady.
I was going to throw up with that comment. I apologize.
Listen, I mean, we're trying to avoid that.
Hey, Dave, this guy, he looks like he's an ex-Jet fan that just had enough of losing. That's what he looks like. And he went to the Patriots. Could you imagine that years ago? When we were kids, we never switched. We voted for, look, Bobby Mercer got traded. I didn't become a Giant fan. I loved him, but you always root for the uniform. You got to learn that. Cat from Jersey. You got to learn that. Cable deal. Hey, the Patriots have done something that nobody with free agency is remarkable. They've been good for 20 years. I mean, that's a dynasty, right? I mean, that's a modern dynasty. I don't want to admit it, but no other. I don't know if any other team has done that in the last 20 years.
Right.
And the Dodgers are starting to be like the Yankees. They're just spending money like crazy to win.
Dodgers are in the league by themselves. That team is loaded. Unless barring injury or some sort of getting knocked off, they're so much better right now. They're crazy. They're crazy. Every aspect of the game, offense, pitching, bullpen. They got guys in the minors that would be playing the majors right now for other teams. So.
Except Price, but
Price.
Well, I think he's been done for a couple of years, so I don't know. That's my opinion. So
he might get hurt.
Yeah, exactly. Another guy gaming too much, right? Then he get like the carpal tunnel by playing video games.
Fortnite. He was playing Fortnite. That was the biggest joke. He went on. That was known in Boston. He was playing Fortnite on his gaming system and sprained one of his hands. It was all over Boston Talk.
What part of Jersey you from, Cat?
Jersey Shore.
Jersey Shore, boy.
Point Pleasant.
Oh, all right. A lot of Flyer fans down there?
Oh, they're all over it. It's annoying. They make me gag.
Yeah, you're kind of borderline down there.
Yeah.
Devils and Flyers.
You get a lot of that. So that's
a lot of Ranger fans. Joe Torre, when the Steinbrenners screwed him over, I became a Dodger fan.
Oh, okay, yeah, he went out west.
After he wrote his book or before he wrote his book?
Yeah, but they had that.
He kept everything in house, and then he wrote a book. Yeah, Joe.
Right.
Come on.
Yeah, I want to hear about Joe. Joe's
with the
full
flies,
of himself
right?
too.
Here you go again.
Yeah, all right. I don't want to. We're going to talk about the Dodgers and Joe Torre. We're going to leave.
Yeah, the Nats. Let's start going.
We got a lot of Flyer comments coming in right now. So,
I know we got a lot of Flyer.
We struck a chord. Which is good. We got Panarin fans. We got a lot of people coming up right now.
As long as the Penguins don't come in.
Okay. We have anybody? We have anybody else who wants to ask us a question there, Anthony? Anybody else? Kat, we appreciate. Thanks, Kat.
Yep.
We got Jay here.
Yeah, I got one, and I'm going to switch gears on you fellas.
There we go. We got to talk about
it. Since we're coming off the Masters, last week, which was rather uneventful, maybe a little historical, but rather uneventful. Certainly without Tiger. So maybe just a little survey of the viewership here. Match play. Let's say best of 3, Tiger versus Jack, without just as is. Tiger can use today's technology, today's equipment. Jack will use the old Persimmon's head and everything else that goes along with his day. Who's going to win best of 3?
I personally think Tiger wins because he just hits the ball so much farther. And that's today's game. I mean, these guys are driving the ball 330, 340 routinely. And again, maybe the course, depending on the course. But
unless Jack designed the course. Maybe you'll have a chance. That's only time. But Jack was a great look. It's different eras. It's like comparing a guy who plays tennis today to a guy like Borg or McEnroe. Jack was the best of his time, and Tiger's the best of his time. But I would agree with Dave. I mean, it's hard to go against Tiger in his prime just because of the distance, right? I mean,
but Gil, 6 under is 6 under.
Yeah, that's true.
6 under is 6 under. It doesn't matter how far you're hitting the ball. If you're making birdies and sinking putts. It doesn't matter if you got 180 in with Jack would be hitting a 6 iron versus these guys today they're 180 in or hitting a lob wedge. So what's the difference between 6 under?
Well, I think the courses they change the courses too. I mean, Tiger's 18 under at Pebble Beach. They changed the pinholes, they changed the they changed the tee box for these guys. Are such big hitters right now. Guys are they have par 5s, 510 yards, and they're using, wedges on the second shot. It's crazy. And I know,
you even saw a guy like Aaron Hicks hit a ball 400 yards. The guy in the Yankees, he hit a ball 400. I mean, these guys are hitting the ball 400.
Yeah.
It's
probably equipment, too. We're probably underestimating, Jack's, ability. I shouldn't say that's ability, because I think you can say that considering the number of tournaments, the majors he won, and how many came in second. I think Nicklaus won 18 majors, and he finished second 19 times, that's 37 times he's in the top 2. So in my opinion, he's the greatest golfer of all time for that reason. But I just think it's tough to compete, and part of it's the equipment, I know, but part of it is just, the guys are bigger and stuff. Jack was called the Bear, right? Because he was a bear, a man.
Bear.
Yeah.
But he wouldn't be a bear today, He'd be another guy in terms of size-wise, not golfing ability-wise.
But Jack did what like Tiger did. He won the Masters when he was 46 years old. That was remarkable. That showed his greatness. When Tiger went at your age. I mean, he was playing guys 20 years younger than him, and he still was able to win. I'm not to know golf and stuff. I know that Nicklaus was great. Tiger's great. Probably, I tell you one thing. I think Nicklaus. I think drives a little bit better. I don't know if he drives his car a little bit better, than Tiger. I don't know if he's. I think he cuts. I don't think he's going 86 miles an hour on a curve, Jack Nicklaus.
They didn't make a Genesis back in the 80s, pal.
No.
So Jay, who wins that match? What's your opinion?
I think Tiger. I think the newer crop is just it's a different breed. It's like everything else.
There's so many great players now. There's so many
But I think it all
boy.
yeah, and like your comments regarding Jordan, and it all comes down to mental discipline and mental toughness. And Jordan could play 6 games in 38, 40 minutes a game with that without thinking about it, because he had that mental toughness. I think a lot of guys, excuse my French, are a bunch of
Okay.
Right.
Hey, I appreciate you. I really appreciate you calling and listening to our show, and I look forward to you calling again in the future. We want to have a lot of interaction. We have a couple more people in the back that want to get some questions, but Jay, thank you for the great question.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye. Good night.
John from Oyster Bay. This is the hockey right here, I think.
Guys, great show so far.
Great, thanks.
Thank
so
you.
right now I'm a little fed up with Brian Cashman. The Yankees, I know it's very early. It's 162 game season, but their starting pitching is very concerning. To go with 2 reclamation projects and Kluber and Tyone, very questionable. He could have traded for Joe Musgrove, who I wanted. His spin rate was very high in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh doesn't know how to handle the pitchers. Cole left there. He became one of the best pitchers in baseball as he is right now. Lance Lynn he should have got, and he goes with Kluber, who hasn't pitched in 2 years. He's 35 years old. He goes with Jameson Tyone, who had 2 Tommy John surgeries. I think those guys have talent. I think they have potential, but to go with those 2 guys over guys that are healthy and performing now is very questionable, and I'm very concerned because the bullpen is going to be worn out by the playoffs, and that's when they need them the most. I'm very concerned right now.
Yeah, well, you probably should, because right now they're not playing well. My concern is they're playing. They have a lot of weak spots, especially when it comes to big games against good pitching. They're not a team that hits good pitching. They're a team that hits mistakes, and so and they're not even taking advantage of that right now. I don't really have an issue with Cashman did over, and Gil, you chime in, but I don't have an issue with what he did, because I thought getting Kluber and Tyone were kind of safe bets, no risk. They're 1-year contracts. I think Tyone's got a good arm. He's throwing, his ball's moving. He's throwing 95, 96. He's got a good hard slider. I think he's going to be fine. Kluber looks like a shadow of himself. He just doesn't have the velocity. Maybe the arm strength will come as we get into the season, because he hasn't really pitched much in 2 years. So maybe the arm strength will come.
I'm not John, I'm not a big fan of, I'll be one of a few Yankee fans. I'm not a big fan of Cashman. I think he's a mediocre GM. He's done some great things, but, the bottom line is we haven't won a pennant since 2009. That's a long time for a guy that has the resources that he has, and he hasn't really done well with the pitching. All right, he signed Cole. Yeah. Was that him or was that management? He signed Sonny Gray, Carl Pavano. He's not really been great with pitching, and I agree with you. They burn out the bullpen every year, and then when it comes to the playoffs, look, you face good pitching, and Dave said it. You face good pitching in October. You're not hitting home runs because you're facing good pitching, and it's very hard. And they don't manufacture runs. And I don't think the Yankees are a very fundamentally sound baseball team. I don't know if it comes from Boone or the analytics or all those nerds, but they don't play baseball the right way. They really don't, and it's going to be hard to win in October. And I'm not big on these reclamation projects. Yeah, it's a low, it's low risk, not spending any money. But with the Yankees, the Yankees they play like they're going for the. Who cares about the, when did this become a whole thing now that they just want to compete or have a participation trophy? The Yankees are known to win pennants. So I just, to me as a Yankee fan, I don't want to go over the luxury tax. I don't want to do this. I want to win a pennant. I want to see a World Series game again. When is that going to happen? And I think Cashman, he gets a free pass. I know the media loves him and stuff, but he really is not criticized for some of his failings. Only his good moves you'll hear. He got Gio, which was a great move, but that's my opinion. I'm not. I would say my opinion on Cashman. I'm not sold on him.
When was the last time the Yankees developed a pitcher in their farm system? A good pitcher. Then Severino. Yeah. That's an exception, but
Severino, Betances,
few. Betances. Now he's shot, but.
Yeah, no. Again, there's not that many. I have less of an issue with Cashman because I do think he's made a lot of very smart. He stole Luke Voigt from St. Louis. He stole Gleyber Torres from Chicago. He stole Ursula from Cleveland and Toronto. Basically, both waived him. He got traded Gleyber, Chapman, then got him back basically just for money. So he's made a lot of Hicks. As much as Hicks has been pretty pedestrian, you look at this roster that he's put together. He's between him and his scouts, they've done a great job just finding these guys. Same thing with Frazier, who I think is actually going to be a good player. They got him for a relief pitcher that was going to be a free agent at the end of the year, and this guy's a lot of potential. So he's done a lot, and he keeps finding the diamonds in the rough. Granted, they haven't developed as many pitchers, but he's done a pretty good job. And don't forget, we started the season with Davey Garcia in the minor leagues. Severino's going to be coming back from Tommy John surgery probably in May. He's going to get Britton back. So there actually are some people who are going to be coming back. And we did start with 6 or 7 quality pitchers, or people who had a chance. A lot of ifs, but the whole rotation. You had 7 or 8 deep. You're hoping that 4 or 5 of that 7 kind of materialize. Including obviously Cole, who's a stud. So I think he's done a pretty good job. I have no complaints about him as a GM. Right now, this team is like Gil said. They're tough to watch because they don't play the fun. They're not fundamentally sound.
Let me add one more thing. I think this season, how just gave Brian stay under luxury tax. I'm being a cheap, it makes me so frustrated. Win a championship. Stop crying poverty. Your franchise is worth over $6 billion. Stop crying poverty to me. Go over the luxury tax like the Dodgers did. They signed Trevor Bauer. They're going to win the World Series. They have great pitching depth. They're going to win. And the Yankees they're going to fall short again, my opinion right now. But it's very early, but it's just very frustrating to me.
Yeah. John, thank you for your great call, and thanks for watching the show. And we have one more guest in the back. Thanks, John. Who's next? Oh, Matthew from New York City. What's your question, Matthew?
Well, I'm glad you brought up earlier about the changes that Major League Baseball is making to shorten the game, to make the game more entertaining. And I'm wondering, do you think that Major League Baseball has a problem with the length of games, the interest that it's generating among younger people? I know not a lot of people like these rules, but would you make any changes of your own?
Well, the problem, Matthew, is the median age of people who like baseball is like 55, 56 years old. So they're trying to do something. I think the marketing of baseball compared to other sports, you got kids that know everything about basketball, football, whether it's media and stuff. They're trying hard to get back to the younger people. But I think a lot of young kids are not in love with baseball. They're trying to speed up the game. I don't think they promote their superstars correctly. I don't think they market the game correctly. That's my opinion. You got a guy, Mike Trout. He's the best player in baseball. We don't even see him. It's like, LeBron James, you see him all the time. You'll see any of those football plays, Patrick Mahomes, this, that, the marketing and the way they stream it and they follow it. The rules trying to make it 7 innings. I'm not a big fan of that. You do these rules. It's like the hockey. They do these I call them millennial rules. They do these rules, and then they got the shootouts, and then you go to regular playoffs, and it should be just overtime. And the regular season shouldn't have overtime. That's how it used to be. Maybe 5 minutes and that's it. But baseball, they're trying hard. I don't know what they're going to make. Dave will probably have more insight into how they're trying to speed up the game. But it's hard. They made some rules where they're not changing pitches every batter. But it's a little slow, the game sometimes, right, Dave?
I love baseball. I can sit and watch baseball. I do. I watch a lot of games.
Boomers like baseball. Boomers love baseball.
We do, but I find myself saying a lot, saying this is unwatchable. This is brutal in terms of the time between pitches, the all or nothing aspect of the game, the pitching changes. It's brutal. I can understand why people lose interest in the game. I just love kind of watching, anticipating, the pitches, see how guys, people's approach the game a little bit more. I get into it a little bit more than most, but I watch the Yankees. Occasionally I watch the Mets, but I don't watch other games. I really don't, because I struggle with getting through a Yankee game. I love watching the Yankees. So if I'm struggling with it, other people are as well. And I think there's some of that. I think more so in baseball. The pace of baseball is so slow. It's losing the younger generation. I also think that where sports is headed right now, because I just know from my kids, people don't watch football either. They watch the red zone. They're watching their fantasy. Football gets the ratings it does, in my opinion.
because of the gambling.
Everybody's in a fantasy leagues, and they're watching Red Zone. They're not watching the game. So I think sports in general has a little bit of a problem. Same thing in kind of basketball. A lot of people I'll watch the second half. I don't need to watch the first half. I tend to disagree a little bit with that, but I think sports in general has maybe a kind of a viewership problem. Baseball in particular, though, because it's painful to watch sometimes. They can drag out. They have to speed up the game. They have to make it. They have to get more base runners. There's got to be. It can't just be an all or nothing, home run or strikeout, and have 5 guys pitching in every single game. I think that something's got to give on that. I don't know how to fix it on my head, but that's
you know what, Dave? The problem is that in the game, you have all these strikeouts, right? You don't have all this inactivity where there's 10, 12, 13 strikeouts a game, where years ago, there's no hitting and run, there's no stealing, there's no bunting, there's no doubles in the gap, extended third base, squeeze bunts, Baltimore chop plays. I mean, stuff that's gone, sack flies. I mean, it's like everything, the game gets so slow because everyone is trying to hit a home run, and it's like either strikeout or home run, and that's like, it's just inactivity. There's nothing going on in the game, So I find that frustrating. I mean, the Yankees have 27 outs, and sometimes they start a game with 10 or 12 outs because they're going to have 12 strikeouts.
Yeah.
I mean, that's 12. That's half the game. They're not putting the ball in play.
Yeah. Yep.
And I don't really like the shifts and all that other stuff. I see a bullet up the middle, and it's the guy's right there. It's like, to me, that's hard to watch too, Dave. I don't, things that we knew that were hits in the gap and stuff is I think
there's a problem with management, like in basically teaching these guys, upward swing, trying to hit home runs, taking away. Somebody's got to explain to me, when there's nobody playing on the left side and you're being handed a base hit by just bunting, why are you not taking it? There's got to be somewhere. You don't think, again, I know this is old school stuff, but take the base hit, especially when there's nobody out or you're trailing by a run. They're giving it to you. Take it, because chances are you're not getting a hit. So take it, or you're going to hit into the shift. And even slow guys can bunt, and even if you don't get a hit, they'll start to think about, all right, we gotta cover the third base line because this guy's prone to bunt. Do it a few times and they'll break up the shift. They don't do it. I don't understand.
And plus, Dave, like, people don't realize it. You got a guy who's got some speed on first. He takes off. They throw a bunt out, a hit and run. That puts a defense. Even when you used to play baseball, that puts you on a defensive. So now you got to make a play. And sometimes people throw the ball down. And the Yankees won a playoff game in '96, right? They bunted the ball. And the guy threw the ball down the line, and they won the game. I think it was Charlie Hayes, the guy Dean Palmer. I think these things happen. Martin, anything could happen in a squeeze play, it's frustrating when they can't manufacture runs, because in the playoffs, that's how you win games in the playoffs.
They're not right now. They're not built for that. The Yankees aren't built for that. And there's a lot of teams that are not built for that because they're.
I know.
And we see it every year, actually.
Oh, someone's saying Bat Day. Oh, Bat Day was great. Someone just said Bat Day. Yeah, that was like when we were kids. That was like the best thing. Could we get a Bobby Mercer bat? We don't want to get a Horace Clark bat. We don't want maybe Roy White. Bat Day was like the best. When you were a kid was.
I like that. Somebody said stop catering to the suits. There's a lot of truth to that, because you go to a Yankee game right now. This happened to me in the 2009 World Series against Philadelphia. I went to Game 1. I got so pissed off because I'm watching the Yankees were losing the game, but it was people on their cell phone. I'm literally a couple on their cell phone, but they're not even paying attention in their prime seats. I was like, I can't go do this, because that's changed. That's changed the viewing a game or going to the game a lot as well. I agree, and the blue sleeves would not quite what used to be. They're kind of changing now.
Hey, what? We want to show a video, Anthony, video 15 before we end the show. Now, in the future, we're going to be on every 2 weeks. I hope you guys can join us, because it's going to be toward the end of the show. We're going to talk next time. We're going to have a nice segment on hockey fights, because I know we've had a demand for that. We love the participation. We love that. So, Anthony, I want you to show video 15, one of our things you don't see anymore. So, ready, set, go, Anthony.
Mark Littell delivers high drive, hits it right center field. That's gone. It is gone. Chris Chambliss has won the American League pennant.
Cosell cannot help himself.
He can't help himself. He broke up Keith Jackson, had a great call. Now look at the people calling on the fans. Do they look like corporate guys? No, they look like blue-collar people, right? That's sitting downstairs. Look at that. Poor guy almost got killed, Chambliss. Oh my God, the guy got crushed there, Dave. Wow. That's a great. You know what? I have to put that in there because it makes me feel good. But you'll never see that with people running on the field and people watching. Hey, look, I went to the Jim Leyritz home run game, 15-inning game. Everybody was there. That was probably just before the cell phone craze, where everybody was looking at their phones and stuff. But years ago, you used to walk around the stadium. You used to see people taking score. Now you're lucky. Does anyone even do score? Does even know what that is? I mean, it's just a different world. But are we ever going to see that again, Dave, with everybody running on the field like that?
Again, it's funny now. It's just like it is absurd because it's going to happen because it did happen all the time. It happened 69 Met. They stormed the field, but they didn't. It was probably 76. It was probably there was probably the city had no money, so they couldn't afford to have the cops or whatever it was. But it's great looking at it. My memory of that when I watched that video is Howard Cosell, because he couldn't help himself interrupting Keith Jackson. He did it 1,000 times. You watch a lot of videos of that. But anyway, there's a couple other comments. I just saw another one come up. Bob Bellucci says 15-second. That's a great way. If they actually followed that to 15 minutes between pitches, the game would go so much quicker. And it shouldn't have to be that hard. If you watch these videos of games, in the 60s and 70s,
2 hours they were done that.
They got it and they threw it. It was it. So.
Hey, Dave, we used to go to games and when I was a kid, the game would start 8 o'clock. The game would end by 10 o'clock, 10:15. You'd be on your way home. I mean, that's how it was years ago.
I know.
So, I mean, now it's a different game. But, I mean, next week we're going to talk about, Dave, which we didn't get into this week, about rivalries, right? We're going to do that next week.
Rivalries, some of the fights that went with it.
Some hockey fights, and we're going to go into some other things. And we do appreciate everyone watching, and also with the questions. The questions were great today. We appreciate that, and like I said, we enjoy this. We want to bring back the past, but also show you, like Dave said, not anything in the past was better, but we just have fond memories of that. And with all the craziness going on in the world today, it's good that we could laugh a little bit. We want you to laugh and be very interactive and have a good time with us here. And we're open to suggestions and anything else. I mean, like I said, we try to do this show without looking at our phones and from memory. And sometimes, as baby boomers, we do forget things, So we're going to try our best to do in the future. But like I said, wrap up. I just want to say thanks for everyone for showing, for sharing your hour with us today. And we're going to be back here again in 2 weeks. Tell your friends, your family, if you enjoyed the show. And we look forward to meeting with you. Dave, it was a pleasure, right? Good night, Dave.
Thank you, Gil.
All right. Good night, everybody. Good night. God bless. All right.
Our favorite fighter of the 70s.